Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining us today for our August 2026 Globe Talk. Today's topic is Understanding Cultural Assumptions, A Journey Through Zurich. Before we begin the Globe Talk, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Tanya Sadowski. I am the Program Coordinator for the Global Engagement Department here at the Community Solution Education System. And I wanted to give everyone just a really quick overview of Globe Talks and a couple of our other global programs that we are doing before I hand it over to our speakers. So the Community Solution Education System Global Engagement Team brings you the Globe Talk sessions. The Community Solution Education System and our schools are committed to preparing innovative, engaged, purposeful agents of change who serve our global community. Our global engagement team works to bring this mission to life by providing leadership, infrastructure, and support for internationalization throughout the community solution community. We are passionate about creating learning opportunities that have a positive impact on our global community. Our Globe Talk series is part of our global engagement mission and provides virtual, year-round discussions to introduce our community to thought leaders in higher education, experts on key functional areas, best practices, and the diversity of ideas necessary to expand our own internal strategic thinking. Another initiative within the Global Engagement Department is Global Distinction. This is a system-wide honor open to students from all Community Solution Education System institutions that recognizes meaningful participation in globally and interculturally focused experiences and is designed to complement any academic program regardless of major or degree level. Students earn this distinction by completing a series of approved activities, such as attending global or intercultural events, in person or virtual, such as Globe Talks, participating in a study abroad or virtual exchange, completing globally themed coursework, or engaging in international service, research, or leadership projects. Some benefits of earning this distinction: there's an honor cord awarded to be worn at commencement. Global distinction is noted on the final official transcript for students. It demonstrates global awareness to employers and graduate programs, and you join a network of globally minded peers. A few tips before the Globe Talks officially begins. We ask that you please mute yourself during today's session, but feel free to use the chat box and reactions throughout. We also recommend keeping your video off in the interest of conserving bandwidth. As our speakers are presenting, we will be monitoring the chat box. We do have a lot of time for Q&A at the end of the session, but feel free to pose your questions or comments throughout. We also request your patience. As you all know, technology can be a challenge and we will do our best. Should there be any issues, all Globe Talks are recorded and available after the session. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our featured speaker. Today's featured speaker is Dr. Melody Bacon. Dr. Bacon has taught in the MFT program at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology for 16 years and in graduate programs for 25 years. She has an expertise in Bowen family systems therapy as well as Jungian analytic psychology. She has led a study abroad program to Zurich, Switzerland on spirituality and addiction for the past 10 years, which explores the ideas of C.G. Jung and how this applied to the nature of substance use disorders. In addition to teaching, she also has a private practice specializing in relationship issues and is the author of 2 books, The Grace-Filled Divorce and Family Therapy in the Treatment of Substance Use Disorders. She is co-founder of the Family Matters Program, an online program for families struggling with substance use disorders. She has presented at numerous conferences and workshops, including AAMFT, International Therapy Association, California Consortium of Addiction Program and Professionals, and the Raise Foundation Conference. It is my absolute pleasure now to turn this presentation over to Dr. Bacon and her panel of students and alumni. Dr. Bacon, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much. And yes, I'm looking forward to the panel discussion, but I'm going to give you a context for the Switzerland experience, and then we'll go from there. So let me share my screen. Let me get that. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to look at cultural assumptions with our Switzerland. As you can see, coming from the United States, we are so big in terms of how, and not, I live in California, so just to get to another state, which would be like Arizona, is like 5 hour drive, one way. So you come to Zurich, and it is very small compared to that. And I think that's, the scale of it is much more compact than we're used to. And within an hour, you're in Germany, or a couple hours, you're in France. So I think, that's something to keep in mind, that we bring with us a mindset based on our context of where we're raised, uh, physically as well as emotionally. This is where we stay when we go to Zurich. And you can see the cowbells that actually they do use. And so there are four official languages in Switzerland because of the proximity that I just showed you: German, Italian, French, and Romansh, which is a derivative of Latin, but it's rarely used. But the majority of Swiss speak German. Where we stay in Zurich is the part of the German-speaking area, and followed by French and Italian. But English is the second predominant language. So, um, and children begin learning this early on. So when we're there, we do, of course, take a tour of, we stay in Old Town. And during this time, um, one of the time periods that we look at, besides the fact that the Roman Empire, of course, came all the way through back in 100 BCE, but also the shift in mindset from the Protestant Reformation, which this was one of the central points for that. And sometimes students will ask, well, why are we even bothering to study this? But it's because it shifted our Western culture thinking from more of a collectivist kind of authoritarian model to an individual, because of the Protestant idea that you're the one that has to read the Bible and decide if what your relationship is with God. That trickled out into lots of other areas of our culture, and at this point in time, we're just assuming that that's the way people look at things. Um, so that being said, the Swiss uh, do have a direct democracy, which is different than ours. Ours is not direct. It is a democracy, but it's not direct. So the interesting thing is, I have a friend who immigrated from Switzerland many years ago, and he was explaining to me some of the challenges of a direct democracy, because each law needs to start by being presented to each of the towns in a certain canton. So instead of states, they have cantons. And you stand in the public square, somebody reads whatever the petition is, and you raise your hand, yay or nay. All of your neighbors see how you voted. And he said there's just a little bit of a concern if you are in the minority, what that's going to be like. It wouldn't be an obvious one, but there's not anonymous voting, and but it is a direct democracy. So the other challenge with that is that it takes a long time for things to get voted into law for the whole country. The most recent one was about keeping the population to under 10 million. So again, give you context, the United States 340 million. I live in the LA area, roughly speaking, LA County has 10 million people. California has 40 million, which is about the same as Canada does. So to think about a whole country that is around right now is around 9 million, that's a very different, again, experience than what we're used to. That resolution, by the way, didn't pass, but I don't know how they would, manage to, once they get to 10 million, what did they do? I mean, people have babies. I don't know. But maybe Melinda can explain that since she has a JD. So, in any case, it was the home. This is one of a statue of one of the kind of leaders of the Reformation in Zurich. And the interesting thing is, this is one of the main cathedrals. But you go into it, it's no longer a Catholic cathedral, it's a Swiss Reformed. So even though the feel of it is, like all the other Catholic churches in Europe, it's not uh, a Catholic church. And there are two near each other. One's the Frau Munster, which Frau means woman, and Munster is cathedral. And that was the one that the nuns would attend. And then there was the Grossmünster, which was the big one for everybody, including the priests. So we do get to see this is in the Fraumünster Cathedral, and looking at these windows that Marc Chagall actually created, and then some more of the artwork. So it is a centralized government, as I mentioned, and it does have quite a cohesive economy, again, because it is a smaller country, but also it's very highly technologically, um, developed and a particular emphasis on pharmaceuticals and things like that. Um, I'm just showing you some of the pictures that we've talked about. Geneva, Switzerland, which is further north from Zurich, and it's in more of the French, Italian area. Um, it has been the European headquarters for the UN since 1945, but the Swiss did not join the UN until 2002. So that's kind of interesting. And they are not part of the EU either at this point because of their concerns about direct democracy and independence. Because once you're part of the EU now, you've conceded to their leadership. Um, Again, this is in what I call the Rodeo Drive. For those of you who are familiar with Beverly Hills, the Rodeo Drive of Switzerland, and one of my favorite restaurants right here because of the pastries. Um, so the Swiss moral code, though, does, um, it is pretty stringent in many ways. And there's, uh, again, because people live now, Zurich is quite a large city, so it might be quite a bit different here than in the rest of the country where it's more rural. But, you know, people people are pretty uh, uh, willing and for example, if there's a fruit stand somewhere with an honor system to leave money, they will do that. So, um, it's again cuts both ways. This is one of the streets that we go down. So here's just a funny little guy named Bergie. We get Boogeyman from Bergie. And this is a festival that takes place on the third Monday in April. And what they do is they take Bergie and put him in this big plaza. This happens to be in a shop window, and they stuff his head full of fireworks. And that at a certain time, at 6 o'clock in the evening, they'll light all the fireworks and look at how long it takes for his whole head to blow off. And it's kind of like our Groundhog Day, right? And depending on the timing, that's going to let you know how long it'll be winter still or spring will arrive. So it's amazing how many people attend this. The first year we were in Switzerland, it co-occurred with this. We'd been in Basel with a group of students. Then again, because it's so small, you can take a train easily to many of the places nearby. And so we came back and it was packed. We'd never seen so many people in Zurich. So this is from the Jung Institute where we go. His house is on, this was a house that somebody bought for the Institute. It's on Lake Zurich. And it was founded in the same town where Jung lived until his death in 1961. Here's a group of our students in front. We go to the Jung Institute for at least two classes, and they usually gear them toward our own interests. There's one of our presenters, Robert Struble. And again, being on the lake, we try when it's nice weather just to take one of the ferries or the boats to Kusnacht rather than drive or rather than take a train. And this is the hospital, Burghölzli, the first one that was built in Switzerland. It's a mental hospital, and Jung did his residency here. And we also meet with the director of the addiction medicine unit right here and learn about how addiction is treated in Switzerland. And that's Dr. Jung's house that he designed and built. And this sign here in Latin, bidden or unbidden, God is present. I have a little plaque on front of my house just to kind of do that. So the first year we were there, one of our international students right here, she's now a provost for a university in Basel, reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you like any help? I live right near where you're going." And I said, "Well, yes, we'd love to see Dr. Jung's house." At the time, it was not a museum or anything. So she got us in. So we had our exclusive tour of the lower area of his home. I'm sitting in Dr. Jung's favorite chair. Now, no sitting in anything. It's a museum and you can look, but don't touch. So we were, again, this is the nice thing about being connected with international students. And then Bollingen, where he had his summer home and he built himself. And then we go to the archives to look at his, this is just one of his, the boxes that they sent with all of his writings and things at the ETH, which is the Technological Institute of Zurich. And there we are overlooking from ETH into Old Town. And the archives have original writings of his with many people, including Freud. And seeing the original letters is pretty amazing. And then we have our final, we have a welcome dinner, and this is a farewell dinner. Most of the time, students are also, after our farewell dinner, kind of take off because from Zurich, you can pretty much get a train to anywhere in Europe and even into England these days because of the channel. And that's that. Yeah, there we go. So I do have a panel of students. So if you'll unmute yourself, we've got David, Cash, Malinda, Sam. Nice to see you. Glad you're here. So these are all students who came with us to Switzerland on this journey, and we thought it would be really nice to have a panel discussion about what they really got out of the experience themselves. And I guess I'll just start with a question and we can take it from there. Uh, One thing that I wondered about was, some of you are quite, I know uh, Cash and Malinda and have traveled quite a bit. But I wondered if prior to going, um, what you were might have been anticipating about, your experience there culturally and personally, and if there was anything that kind of surprised you, you know, um, from there. So, Melinda, you want to start us off?
Sure. Am I unmuted? Like you said, I have traveled to Europe a number of times, but I had never been to Switzerland or Germany, just
Hmm.
the relation. So I'm always struck when I go to Europe about the difference in how people interact. Um, Not that you necessarily think of Americans as being always so friendly or whatever, but we
Hmm.
do interact with strangers. We make small
Hmm.
talk. You check into a hotel and you talk about the weather and you say, oh, your lobby is beautiful, whatever. You just kind of interact.
Hmm.
And they do not do that there at all.
Hmm.
And it's not rude. They just don't
Hmm.
do it. And when you do, they look at you like, what's wrong with you? A
Yeah.
little bit. So you have to adjust to that a little bit. They're just the facts. I don't know if that's extra because of the German influence.
Yeah.
I know, Germans are not known for their
A little bit more reserved.
yeah, reserved and, just very much straight to the point.
Oh, yeah.
So, definitely notice that. I always notice that in Europe because it's kind of like that everywhere, but it's still different. Like Italy,
Hmm.
people aren't interacting with strangers, but yet once you're talking to them, they're more jovial and
Mm.
but I definitely noticed that a little bit in
Mm.
Switzerland.
Okay, great. So, David, what about you?
So that was actually my first time going to Europe. I've actually never been before that. I've been to Mexico, which was the only places I've ever traveled to. Going into it, I was just kind of open-minded to like what I might experience. Um, I agree with the Melinda. A lot of the individuals don't really like make that small talk until it's initiated.
Mm.
I did experience it a lot. I honestly thought I was going to rely a little bit more on my Spanish because I speak Spanish. I'm pretty fluent in it, just because how
Hmm.
close Spain is.
Yeah.
But even then, there's the amount of Spanish I spoke was very minimal compared to the amount of English I spoke, but everyone
Hmm.
there was so helpful and willing to help. It was a beautiful experience, in my opinion, as to
Hmm.
just not even just interacting with the people, but actually like seeing all the sights, going to the mountains. I went to Interlaken before going to Zurich, and just seeing how like you can travel, you kind of stated it earlier, how much you can travel like pretty quickly.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
got to go see the mountains, and then I got straight back into the old town. So it was a really nice experience for myself.
Oh, great. So, Cash, how about you?
I kind of experienced the same as Melinda. I mean, I'm still living in, I mean, it's considered Europe, but I'm in Central Asia. I'm in Tbilisi, Georgia, and I was living here. I've been living here for about a year beforehand.
Okay.
And so it was kind of, I was like rejoining American culture by joining the group again, you know. And it was really
Interesting.
interesting because we were at the psychology club.
Yes,
And
that's right.
there was this question, or there was like they finished their speaking, and then the speaker was like, "Any questions?" And then one of the people in our group was like, "I really like the part where you did this," right? Like a very classic American thing. We just give compliments and thing. And then this lady just like looked at her for like a minute and was like, that was not a question, you know. It was like, and I was just
That's a
like,
good
I
example.
mean, technically, yeah, it wasn't a question, and yeah, it was really interesting to kind of watch that.
Yeah, I love
Um,
that example. I'd forgotten that.
there were a few things like that. It was
Yes.
kind of cute to watch.
Yeah.
But in general, I mean, I really enjoyed. I mean, I've been to Europe a lot, but Switzerland is on its own. I think maybe there's a few other places, but in terms of quality of life, like in Zurich,
Mhm.
just maybe the most simple like thing to illustrate this is just the fountains, for example. You
Yes,
have like alpine water on tap from like some beautiful fountain, and everyone's filling up their water bottles, and it's better than any bottled water you can get. And these types
totally.
of little things, they just kind of led to like I felt like it was a very like in general like healthy society. Like
Yeah.
uh my interactions with people were very warm. Yeah, I don't know, it was very
hmm
interesting for me.
Yeah, that's a good example. And I know students, when we tell them just go up to one of these water fountains, the typical fountains and you can just put your water bottle in there, and they kind of like, I'm like, no, no, it's really good water. It's from the Alps. It hasn't been circulating for 20 years and bird
Yeah, it
poop
was
in it and all
tasty, it
that.
was refreshing.
So, yes, that's a good example. So, Sam, how about you?
Yeah, the thing that I was probably most conscious of from the beginning was that I'd be traveling in Europe with 16 strangers. And so I think that was probably what was taking most of
Yeah.
my headspace and almost immediately evaporated on that first day. Cash wasn't part of our cohort, but I had the chance to meet David, Malinda, and many others. And really, I was don't know if I was expecting, and I probably should have been because it's kind of common sense, but I wasn't expecting just the sheer like history and the beauty of the city and just how kind of interwoven I felt into that almost immediately. I don't,
Mhm.
we were very clearly tourists, right? There were 16 of us
Mhm.
walking around on that first day with a
Correct.
walking tour guide, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, it didn't feel, I'm from Chicago, right? So it didn't feel like we were on Navy Pier, if that makes any sense
Yes.
for anyone from Chicago. But it was everything we saw and everywhere we went, the just the environment was so wonderfully, almost felt curated over time, and it was really special.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So, in general, then for the panel, um, you know, what were there moments where you might have had some discomfort or confusion or misunderstanding? I mean, I think Kash gave a good example. It wasn't really confusing, it was just a different response than what we normally have. And, what you might have learned from that, but also just in general, we spent 8 days in Zurich, and half of the program, and I think students always comment on this as a positive in the evals, and our we have an excellent program leader, Drasko Djurkovic, who has done this program with us for at least 8 years, if not more. It's his favorite one. But what he likes as well, and our students like, is that half the day you're free to
Mhm.
explore, which to me is part of the experience. There's the learning part and the formal engagement, but usually around, after lunch, you kind of get to be on your own. And so, given all that, though, I guess the question would be, you know, navigating the city and learning, did that teach you things that you could not have learned in the classroom? So um
I mean, like I said, I've traveled a lot, but I've literally never spent more than 3 or 4 days at any one city.
uh-huh.
You travel,
Oh,
you spend
yeah,
like 10
sure.
days and you hit 4 countries and it's kind of busy, busy. So it was a really nice experience for me to be able to essentially live in a place for a while where I would have afternoons where instead of I'm going to see this, this, and this, I would just leave the hotel and just start walking.
Hmm.
And we were in such a great place that you could walk into, and explore.
Everyone.
And I would spend an entire afternoon and not really necessarily be able to list sites that I saw,
Hmm. Hmm.
but just kind of wander around like I lived there
Hmm.
and, stop in a cafe and sit down by myself and have lunch, which is much more
Hmm.
normalized there. You don't feel as
Oh,
like
yeah, very much
by
so.
myself. Yeah. So that was really neat for me to be able to feel like I'm just really a fly on the wall, kind of witnessing life go by instead of I'm going to
Mm.
this museum and this, attraction as a tourist. I felt much more like like I just really got to experience being
Right.
in the city. and it was really just beautiful. And,
Yeah.
you know, as much as I am prone to getting lost, with your app, you could kind of just wander for
Oh,
a while and then just walk back, plug it in,
yes,
find your way back. So I just have never had that luxury on vacation before or traveling abroad before, and I
yes.
really enjoyed it.
That's a good point. It's really staying somewhere for 8 days. A lot of the other programs are 2 weeks, but because Zurich is a little pricey, we got down to 8 days. But to your point, where we stay, because it's so walkable, it's the old town, um, whole shops, restaurants, museums, whatever. And then, yeah, the beauty of it, even the Lima River, you can take a water taxi from the lake up if you want. And yeah, you can spend a nice afternoon just walking around and exploring without any agenda. So, yeah, that's great. So, David, how about you?
So I kind of wanted to mention, and it might answer one of the questions that was in the chat, but it was the train systems and like the trams because they're always functioning at every moment of the day.
They are.
Uh, so I made an effort when I had the free afternoon to go to
Hmm.
a different travel somewhere new. I can't tell you how many cities I visited while I was there, but I was making sure I was always out and about. I got to see different lakes and everything. But it was mentioned to us that one of the trains are always working, and it's true. Every couple minutes, there's always a train coming by to get you back from where you're at, back to Zurich. Um, I don't know if I ever told you this, Bacon, but the one night I went off, I think like 40 minutes away to another city to see a lake, the trains actually stopped working for us. So we were stranded from like 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. in the morning, which doesn't happen there. They're
Very rare.
very punctual. Yeah, they're very punctual. You have to be exactly on time.
Yes.
Everything's always calm every couple minutes. But out of all my luck, I made the most out of it. I went back to the lake and just swam for a little bit. But with the technology, it's very easy to just get around and find a train and or a tram just to get you around the
Yes.
city or to different cities.
Yep. Exactly. And yeah, I do tell our students when they say this train leaves at 9:42, it's 9:42,
Hmm.
not 3, 4, 5. And I happen to operate like that. So when I first came to Zurich, I'm like, yes, I found my people. So, but to your point, if you miss one, there'll be another one, and they are very helpful. And
Yes.
the people that work at the train station. So we're near the what they call the Hauptbahnhof, I'm sorry, high, meaning big train station. It's many levels of trains from all over. And I thought it was so there are a lot of workers there. And last time we were there, after our program was over, we were taking a train to Munich, Germany, and we're waiting on this lower level platform. And a worker comes up and says, "Are you waiting for the train for Munich?" And we said, "Yes." She says, "Well, go upstairs to this platform and then take that train because this one's going to be delayed." And she told several other people. And it was a good thing because we had a train that we had to catch in Munich to Regensburg. And if we had missed the first one, we wouldn't have caught the second one. And Regensburg is it's a little medieval town on the Danube. But anyway, there's not as many trains. And I was so impressed that somebody would come and tell us this and search us out. It was so helpful. The other thing that I was impressed with, so in Switzerland, Sunday, all the businesses are closed. Many of the shops, the only ones that stay open are ones that provide groceries, in case you need food, and of course restaurants. But uh, the Swiss or somebody being innovative, thinking outside the box, thought, well, in train stations, that's an exception because people are traveling. And so they created a mall inside the train station. So that one is open on Sundays if you really have to shop for a dress or something. So anyway, and it's a multi-level mall. So that was kind of interesting. Uh, so Cash, how about you?
The question's kind of evaporated. Are we talking about technological advancements or just
No, just in terms of, what you may have learned that surprised you, or, you know, just what did you learn basically that you wouldn't have learned in the classroom by being
sure.
there?
I think the main takeaway for me was being in the environment that C.G. Jung grew up in. Because like
Yeah,
you really understand like what a departure it was for his like for him to be able to like build such a system and bring all these esoteric views and be spiritual. Like it's such a logical like like
that's a
kind
good
of
point.
society. And I just imagining him there having clients there, and he had a lot of like
Oh,
he had
yeah.
a lot of negative feedback, right? Like, so yeah, it was, I think that it
Oh,
was
yeah.
interesting seeing that. I think just the general art and stuff there was interesting. Like, one of my favorite painters, they have a lot of his work, Ferdinand Hodler, at the Kunsthaus there. It's just, there's all this, like, all these murals by him are just randomly dotting the city. It's just crazy to me, like, because he's like,
That's
he'd be
true.
the equivalent of like Klimt or something, but he just, you're just at like a grocery store and above it, it's like a Hodler mural. Yeah, I think that.
Yeah. In the police station, there's Giacometti, who was a
Mm.
wonderful
Yeah.
artist, and he did all of these murals, including painting the ceiling. And in order to get in, there's a certain time frame you're allowed in. You have to wait in line because it's a police station. It's like a working police station. And so you go in, of course, you go through, all of the checks, and you go in though, and here's this beautiful mural, and and you just kind of sit there and wonder. And so yeah, it's that I think you'd be hard pressed to find that kind of artwork in any police station in the United States. Now, that being said, it probably wasn't one when Giacometti made his murals, but the fact that they have kept that as an option for people to come and visit, as well as, kept those old murals up to date, and, all that, I think it's says a lot about the value that they put on art. So, yeah. So, Sam, how about you? Anything that
Yeah.
you think you learned outside that you wouldn't have learned in the classroom?
Yeah, definitely. I found the whole experience to be like, profoundly transformative. One of the things that I remember, if you choose to go on this study abroad trip, you'll have a meeting with Dr. Bacon. And I remember in my meeting with Dr. Bacon ahead of time, I'd shared, I worked in substance use treatment and all this, and I kind of think that this, Jungian stuff is a little foo-foo. It's a little out there for me. And so I really look forward to this because it's going to change the way, and it really did. It changed the way that I looked at a lot of things in my own life, clinically, case conceptualization, and a lot of that came down to the environment. So I mean, I don't want to discount the lectures and the
Mhm.
talks because they were really important and it was a good foundation. But as soon as we got to Switzerland, a lot of the things that we were learning about weren't things that I guess I'd been exposed to, and some of the things that stood out to me. So the power of imagery, symbolism, the power of some of these collective stories that we see through different cultures and through different time periods. And really, it's like to me, it boils down to the same 8 stories of humanity, right? And how different people
Mhm.
have interpreted that. And so we got to learn about those in a very unique environment. I think
Mm,
a productive fish out of water feeling, uh,
yeah.
and from people who had, as Cash mentioned, right, like they grew up in this, right? It's so cool to see the environment that they grew up in, of course, much later, but similar to that
Mhm.
of Jung. And from psychiatrists to psychologists and people who had walked the walk of addiction, and that whole spectrum of being able to learn from those individuals in their kind of on their home turf was really cool. And so
Yeah.
I think that that's the part that wouldn't have translated from watching that on a recording probably wouldn't have done the job. It was really cool
Mhm.
to share space with those people and learn from their stories and from their experiences, both as people, but then, of course, with the clinicians, a lot of their vignettes that they
Mhm.
shared, and it was really, really great. And so I left that trip not thinking it was so foo-foo, and I was like, this is really important, and this is, actually this actually is the whole circle, the whole big deal. And I was just focused on, you know, protocols and worksheets, and
Yeah.
you can't worksheet somebody into life transformation. I think that's one of the
I'm going
big,
to use that quote.
yeah. So I think that's one of the big things that I took from that trip.
I like that. Yeah, the connection that Jung had with the 12-step program, he did not even know until Bill Wilson, one of the founders, wrote him a letter, and that letter they had an exchange then afterward about Jung's ideas, which are the only written ideas of his about addiction. But it was maybe 6 months prior to Jung's death, so I had and the cool thing is seeing the original letter that Bill Wilson wrote and the response, yeah, it does make it kind of more alive and kind of thinking, I don't know, kind of gets in as a reality rather than a concept. Yeah. So, um, so in general, then, because we went to some of you've mentioned, the Jung Institute in Burghölzli, which is, not only where he did his residency, but also they do have a large addiction treatment center. And the interesting thing is, I didn't know this until a couple of years after we started going, that our first trip to Burghölzli was when the director of the unit first started as the director. So he has a fondness for our group of students because we kind of all started at the same time together. But learning about addiction treatment in another country, particularly in Switzerland, and what really stands out for you about, some of the differences or similarities. And we also, as you noted, Sam, we heard from various clinicians who work with people who are struggling with addiction. But anyway, I wondered what you took away from that, particular experience.
I would just say, partially going off what Sam said, because I at the time was working at a residential
That's right.
treatment facility with a lot of addiction, not just addiction, but one of our houses was addiction based. And I like the way he put it because it was very worksheet, DBT,
Hmm.
life skills, behavioral type stuff. And so the contrast to all the sort of, even if you don't get to the spiritual part of it, just sort of the
Hmm.
more depth of like what your character is and sort of the more psychodynamic based, what brought you to this place, what are your motivations was a really good contrast for me to see.
Mm.
Because that's more in line with how I want to work therapeutically
Hmm.
and to see it more thoroughly applied to addiction. Because I think at least the way it was presented to me where I worked is like, okay, well, you can use that psychodynamic stuff with the mental health issues, but
Yes.
when you're dealing with the addiction issues, it's, you know,
I know.
and I that didn't really sit very well with me, and that was confirmed for me on the trip, and kind of like looking at how important it is to look at the broader picture.
Mm.
And I guess part of that is the whole therapy coupled with AA
Mhm.
kind of thing together, and also just how focused they are in Switzerland on harm reduction
Yes.
versus as I feel like we talk the talk a little bit about that here, but aren't
Hmm.
as consistent in applying it. Um,
Hmm.
in embracing it, I guess.
Hmm.
So that was
Yeah.
an interesting contrast to see too for me.
Yeah. Great.
Um, I found like a very much similarities between the two. So,
Hmm.
I work at a youth shelter, and just seeing how they kind of ran their facility with bringing in agriculture, bringing in like how teaching them
Yeah.
psychoeducation on like addiction, taking them out in nature was a big thing, especially at the institute where they actually had the walk where you can go out
I
into the
know,
back,
that
look
beautiful.
out into this like scenery that was actually extremely beautiful. Um, just similarities between that of just incorporating different aspects to it and the psychoeducation portion as to just kind of how they ran just the facility. And then I also took a lot from listening to different I remember we got some people in recovery that came in and spoke to us, just
Hmm.
saying how they kind of went through, especially with the 12 steps. I currently am having my practicum at a recovery center, and I
Hmm.
took a lot from just the subconscious, what kind of like archetypes are coming up for them, and just kind of working along those ideals and see
Cool.
how I can implement it into my practice, into my therapy. And honestly,
Nice.
I think it's had a big influence into how I kind of run my therapy. And I think it's a beautiful thing. I think I took
Love that. Fabulous. Yeah. So Cash, how about you?
There was a speaker you brought, I forgot their name, but they were in charge of reducing, there was like a drug epidemic, I think, in some
Yeah,
area.
Marcos.
And
He's every year I'd be nervous that he was retiring and not going to speak anymore, but that's like 40 some odd years of Jungian analysis and working with addictions.
it was really interesting because they had this approach where, I mean, I think you had a disagreement with them about the lack of the there's a
Oh,
chemical,
not using
mether,
Suboxone.
yeah, Suboxone, yeah.
Yeah, he didn't
Um,
know what that was, but
yeah, but still the fact that they had such a reduction and it was because it was such a communal effort. And I was
mhm.
thinking like at the time I was like it's really so hard to mobilize that in the States and I was wondering why, I was like maybe it's just the culture here. There's maybe a more homogenous culture, maybe smaller, closer knit, I don't know, but
Oh, it's a good question.
and they had like 95% reduction in drug
Mhm.
use or something. It was like some immense amount without and it was just through like awareness and advocacy. I don't know. It was like,
Mhm.
um, yeah, that was really fascinating to me.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think um, we have such a huge diversity of, I mean, you go even in California between cities and
The
areas.
lack of community or communal like
But
bread.
I
Yeah.
was reading a really good book called Crooked Smile by a guy who totally got into a meth addiction. And he was in LA on the streets panhandling. But he went to one of these needle distribution places and he said give him a bag explaining how to inject, which he was afraid to do, but he wanted that hit. And he said, you know what would have been nice though if they just put a card in there, here's where you can get treatment.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, the step we don't have. We might give people the methadone or whatever, but not say, hey, by the way, if you're interested.
Yeah, we're very good at the sort of like the economic approach to things, right?
Correct.
Like, in therapy, CBT, it's like get the
Yep.
workforce, some solution, get back to work. But in terms of like a humanistic aspect, we really lack in that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and Sam, and then I see Tanya saying we got about 10 minutes, so
Yeah.
sorry to squeeze you in at the end.
No, I'll keep it brief. A lot, everything stood out to me, but I think that the two things that were in biggest contrast uh, to here back at home is at the hospital. I remember asking him like, "What's your average length of stay?" I used to work at a
Oh,
hospital.
yeah.
Average length of stay, and what's all that? And in his answers, you could tell that they weren't really focused on discharge; they were focused on healing. And I think that that
Mm.
was um, uh, like a good wake up call. Be like, oh yeah, we're so concerned about
Oh,
how
we
many
are.
days, right? How many hours until you're better, so you're over there, and then we can bring the next person in and over there it was much more holistic. And David described the environment there of being a much more healing environment and agriculture and things like it. It was
Mhm.
just really different than the safety net hospitals that I've had the chance to be
Mhm.
at. Um, and then the other thing that stood out to me is I forget her name, the presenter at the Psychology Club, and she talked a lot about dream work and her dream work uh, in her clinical practice, and that was such a new concept to me. And uh, not something that I'd feel comfortable or trained to do, but it was so cool to see how she essentially worked with her clients through issues that they were having interpersonally or in their life without really
Yeah.
talking about those issues, but talking about the unconscious signals. And I learned the term circumambulate a problem, and that's really changed
Yes.
view
Walk around.
conceptualization. Yeah, and she was saying you walk around an entire problem from every perspective, and yeah, it was both those things really stood out to me the most.
Great. Thank you so much. So, yeah, we'll open up for questions. I'm looking at some that have been posted. Yeah, so Scott Essman wanted to know about technological advancements. I don't know personally. I couldn't tell you. I do know they're very big in pharmaceuticals and,
Watches.
you know, uh, also in medical, general technology. Um, my husband happened to have a uh, torn retina, sagging retina, and within one day he went from urgent care to an ophthalmologist to the hospital to laser treatment to shore up his. And Ron, my husband says he's also a MFT and a expert in addiction. That's why he co-leads. But anyway, he said, well, if you want really good medical treatment, especially with something as precise as laser treatment, you want to go to the nation of watchmakers. So anyway, that's his joke, but he felt very good about that. Um, and then Scott's also asking if the Swiss government subsidizes medical research. I would imagine they do. They certainly subsidize treatment, and as I think Sam pointed out, there wasn't this sense of, okay, you've got the most 28 days in and out, which I've always said in this country, in cancer treatment is not done in 28 days. It's a 5-year horizon, and it should be the same for, not that you're in treatment for 5 years, even for cancer, but but I think, yeah, the idea of get things done, and Malinda kind of alluded to, here's the forms you fill out, so those, and the data are very clear that we have a poor track record. I think a huge majority of people don't complete the 28 days. They voluntarily just drop out because they want to use, and the other ones that do complete will relapse within a week. So, um, I think that's um, again, a very big difference when you have, and as Sam and I think Cash noted too, just where Burghölzli is, it was a traditional mental hospital. So there's beautiful landscape and grounds and agricultural, and there used, I think, horses and, different. So they're looking at the whole person, not just treating you like we're taking your appendix out and out you go. So it's a very different attitude that I think it would, most of us when we walk away think, gosh, I wish, I know I've said if I had a hospital like that near me, I'd probably be working there full time. So, any other questions? I know we're getting close to the end, but thank you, Scott, for all your questions. It's, um, you know, I think it's very interesting that the reason why the Swiss can be so independent is because they are, as people have noted, a fairly wealthy nation. Um, and I think it's partly because they've stayed at the cutting edge of a lot of things.
Excellent. Thank you all. I don't see any other questions in the chat. If anybody has any, you can raise your hand or
You can
unmute
also
yourself.
email me or,
There you go.
anybody.
Would it be okay on that note, Dr. Bacon, if I send in the wrap-up email, your email to everybody who registered, just in case there
Sure.
are any questions? Fantastic. Excellent. Thank you. So since there don't seem to be any other questions, I really, really, really want to thank Dr. Bacon and this incredible panel of students and
Yes.
alumni. It was really, really, really a fantastic presentation. Makes me want to jump on a plane and get back to Europe. So thank you all for being here today. We really appreciate your
Yes.
time. Look forward to hearing more about your future travels and adventures in Switzerland.
Yes.
And that is all for today. Please keep an eye out on your emails for any upcoming Globe Talks or other information from the Global Engagement team. On that note, thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Yes, thanks to our panel. I appreciate your giving back the 12th step. There you go.
Thank you.
All right. Hope to see you
All right.
before too
Bye,
long.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.